thank you for joining the webinar first of all. My name is Leighton Ashcroft. I'm a technical marketing specialist here at Autodesk, and today we're going to be taking a look at ArtCAM standard. Now, this is just basically an introduction into the 2D toolpaths. We're not going to be doing anything majorly technical. It's entirely for basically new guys to machining. I'm just going to show you how you can cut things out, how you can use the most basic toolpaths within ArtCAM. Okay, so these are basically the bread and butter toolpaths that you will use day in, day out to cut parts out, drill holes, machine out areas. The 2D toolpaths just follow a path or a line to a depth. So that's what basically makes them 2D toolpaths, and they're just cut to a specified depth. I'm going to show you how to machine this chopping board today, and this has just been designed really quickly. It's just vectors. Okay, so even though it looks as though it's a 3D model on the screen, that's basically the simulation. That's what's going to cut. Okay, so this is just vectors. And I've also included a few little mistakes that I've put in there just to show you how to actually get around them. Okay, so the first thing that I need to do is to open up the file. Okay, so I've got a file that I've already created. So let's open and let's choose this chopping board start. Okay, so this is just all about toolpaths. I'm not talking about actually designing things. Okay, so that will open up in the 2D view. Sorry, that will open up in the 3D view. If you want, you can switch to the 2D view. Now, the trouble with doing this in the 2D view is that you can't rotate it around and you can't actually see what depth this is going to. So what I tend to do is switch to the 3D view and then rotate it around. And that way, when you create the toolpath, you can actually see the toolpath in red, and you sort of get used to actually seeing how the toolpath looks, and you can see how deep it actually goes. Okay, so the first thing that you need to do in your own mind when creating the toolpaths for this part is to decide how you want to go about machining this. Now, the main thing that you probably want to do is to cut the part out last. Okay, now that may sound pretty obvious, but I've seen lots and lots of people cut the part out first and then decide to machine all of the other bits. Okay, so what happens is the part flies off the machine and hits a wall or something. That's because it's not held in the material anymore. So normally what you would do is cut the part out last. Okay, now this particular piece I'm not really that fussed about. I'm going to cut the part out last, but any of the inside bits that are on this I'm not really too bothered, so I'm just going to play by ear. Okay, so maybe the first thing that I'm going to do is to sort out this hole for hanging the chopping board up. Okay, now I did mention that I threw a few curveballs in here. One of them, if I take a plan view of this and zoom in on the hole, is that that's not circular, it's just being drawn freehand. And that's not a problem. I'll show you how you can get around that, how you can drill that. Okay, so the first thing to actually create the toolpaths is that you need to go to the project menu and select toolpaths, and that will open up all of the toolpaths below the splitter bar. Now you'll see that there's actually a section called 2D toolpaths. Now in this demonstration we're just going to focus on a few of these toolpaths. These are the toolpaths that you will probably use the most. Okay, now if you haven't got this, if you happen to lose this or do something, a lot of people do this. They accidentally click on the cross or something and then lose it, and don't know how to get that back. If you ever do that, all that you need to do is go to Window and select Reset Layout. Okay, and that will completely reset the layout and bring it all back. Okay, so don't worry if you do that. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is drill this hole. Now, the drilling toolpath is located underneath the profile toolpath, so it's the second one down under 2D. So if I select that, that will open up a new dialog box. Okay, now the first thing that I'm going to do with this is come down to the bottom and set up my material. So if I select that, let's just open this out a little bit. And you can see that I've already set this to be 15 millimeters because I've done this earlier. And I want the material Z0 to be at the top. So dependent on how you set your machine up, if you set your Z0 at the top of the material or at the bottom, just determines which one of these you actually choose. And the material thickness is the thickness of the material that you have on the machine. Okay, so I'm going to say that this is 15. Now, as soon as I do this, it will zoom out and it will create this material block in a translucent blue. Okay, so let's zoom back in on that circle, or what wants to be a circle, and let's select it. Okay, and you can see that I've got a start depth and a finish depth. Okay, now this is just a basic demonstration. I'm not going to go into all of the specific options. That's going to be in part 2. Okay, we're going to take a look at a few more detailed options. Okay, that's going to be probably in about a month's time. Okay, so the finish depth, let's select that, and I'm going to do that to 15, so it's going to cut all the way through. Now the tool that I want to select, click select. This is what you will be greeted with when you start the program. Okay, so I'm going to go into metric tools. Let's go into wood or plastic. And then I've got roughing and 2D finishing, 3D finishing, V-carving. Now the V-carving, OG, raised panels, these have just got specialist form on there. I'm not going to touch these in this demonstration. I'm just going to be concentrating on roughing and 3D finishing. Okay, now the roughing and 2D finishing contains end mills. So these are just your standard sort of straight walls, flat bottomed tools. Okay, now this is what you want to use to create, basically to drill the hole out. If you use anything else, let's say a 3D finishing one, let's say a 6mm ball nose, you can see that it's got this radius on there. So if I was to drill right the way down to the depth, it would leave a radius in all around the edge of it. I obviously don't want that. Okay, now this may be common knowledge to most of you on here. I've just basically created, this is just an introduction example for basically for new people to see and see it. Okay, so what I'm going to do for this is to choose a 6mm end mill. Now I should have mentioned any questions or anything, I'll sort that out at the end of the demonstration, because if I keep on opening up the dialog box for the GoToWebinar, it's really distracting for the actual demo. So I'll sort that out at the end of the demonstration. Okay, so let's choose the 6mm end mill. And you can see that that's been selected there. Now the default for this is to drill the center of, and it says selected circular vectors. Now obviously this is not a circle, so what I need to do is select all selected vectors. So this is just going to find the center of this vector that I have here. Okay, and then when I've got that, click calculate now. Okay, now you can see that it's put a crosshair in the center of the vector, and it's also given me these two lines. Now if I zoom out and take a look at these, you can see that that's coming from the center and it's coming across and then it's going down. Now, this is what we call a rapid move. So basically the tool is coming across really fast until it gets to this point and then it's plunging down into the material. Now you can control that by this machine save Z. So if I open that up, you can see that the save Z is set to 5mm above the top of the material. So if I was to set that to say 25mm, just to show you, and then calculate again, you'll see that it's moved up. Okay, so now it's 25mm high. Okay, so let's close that. And let's actually take a look at the toolpath. Where does the toolpath gone? I've created it. I don't know where it actually is. Now, where it is hiding underneath the toolpaths. So if I open up this arrow, you can see that I've got a drilling toolpath. And I can also open up that arrow to denote a drop-down menu. And you can see that I've got this 6mm end mill. Now I can actually select that and it will give me all of the parameters that I can change rather than having to go back into the toolpath to actually change these. So if I want to change, let's say, the spindle speed, I can just change that there. Now there's also the simulation color. I'll explain that in the next part that we're actually going to be machining. Okay, so that's basically the drilling. Okay, now let's take a look at this personalized LA. Now if I want to get this blue line out of the way, I can do that by selecting the light bulb. So I can turn off that light bulb. This is the 3D visibility on the far right. This one is the 2D wireframe. Okay, and I'll explain what this one is, the 2D simulation, in a moment. Okay, so this one, I want to machine this to a depth. Okay, I want to basically create a pocket. So I want to machine all along the inside of this LA. Okay, now I can do that by selecting Toolpaths, and then I can go down to Area Clearance. Okay, so this is basically blasting a lot of the area away. So if I select that, much the same sort of dialogue. Let's enter a finished depth. I'm going to do that, let's say 1mm for this. And you've got a tools list with this one. So this allows you to add more than one tool. Okay, so let's add some tools. So I'm going to add the 6mm, and I'm going to add a 3mm, and I'm also going to add the smallest tool that I have by default, the 1.5mm. Now, at the moment, they are all set to machine. The clearance strategy is raster. Now, that's probably not really great for this particular piece, because what will happen is it will come across down the bottom of the A and then jump up and go back to the other side, jump up, go and do the L. So I'll have a lot of retracts and plunges. It will take probably twice as long to actually do this. So it's better for this example to create an offset. So this will basically offset the shape inwards and just follow it around. Now I want to do that for each of these. So let's just change each one to offset. Okay, and when I've done that, I can select calculate now. Now what will happen is the 6mm may not be able to actually get in there. It may be too big, so it may not even create a toolpath. The 3mm will machine. The 1.5mm, that will go in the areas where the 3mm couldn't actually get. Okay, so it does what we call rest machining, so just 2D rest machining. Okay, now I'll explain a bit more about that in a moment when we look at the simulation. Okay, so for now, I'm going to select calculate now. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I threw in a few curveballs here. Now, it says 2 or more of the selected vectors overlap each other. Okay, so it's not letting me machine this. It should give me this error another couple of times. So that's for each tool. and it's just telling me that no toolpath was created. Okay, now the problem that I have is that the L is overlapping on the A. Okay, now what I could do with this is to just trim this off, but a real easy way to do this is to use what we call the weld tool, which will automatically trim it off and join it all together. Now to do this, what I need to do is right click and ungroup the vectors. Now normally to do this I would ungroup all of the vectors, but I just want to show you what happens if you just ungroup the vectors. Okay, so I've ungrouped the vectors, but this A is still grouped together. It's still got two pieces. It's still got two pieces which make up the A. So if I select both of these, the L and the A, and then I go to merge and then weld these, you can see that it's got rid of the center island of the A, and that's not what I want. So what I need to do is ungroup that, and what we need to do is make sure that we select ungroup all, and that will completely ungroup that A. Okay, now I can select the outside, not the inside, and then do the same thing. Okay, so there you can see it's basically trimmed that off. Now, don't worry if you're not keeping up with this. I'm recording this, so don't worry. We'll send out the recording later on in the week, and you can take a look at it. Okay, so let's select all of these and then calculate again, and it should work this time. Okay, so let me close that. Now you can see that I've got all of these grey, which are 2D wireframe previews. I can turn those off, and that leaves me the red. Now, I'm not really too sure what's going on here. I'm not sure what parts are missing. I can see at the top there's a bit missing there, and you can also see on the right hand side that it's only created a toolpath for the 3mm and for the 1.5mm. So the 6mm was too big to actually get in there, so it hasn't created a toolpath. Okay, so I'm going to take a look at what the center light bulbs do. So if I select the 3mm end mill, you can see that the simulation color is green. If I select that, it gives me the color wheel, and I can change the color of that if I want to. Let's select OK. I'll change that to blue. Now if I switch to the 2D view, zoom in on here so you can see it, this gives me a much better representation for things like this, so I can actually see where the tool's actually going. So if I go to that middle light bulb, it basically colours in all the areas that 3mm tool can actually get. Okay, so it's showing me where it's machining. Now if I go to the 1.5mm, you can see that colour is red, and I can turn that on. Okay, so that's showing me where that's actually going. Now, obviously, there are a few places that this is missing. Now, I'm not expecting it to go right in the corners because it can't physically go in the corners because of the radius of the tool. So what I'm going to do, if you want to edit the toolpath, just right click on the toolpath and select edit. And then you can add a new tool. And you can see that the smallest tool that I have is a 1.5mm end mill, so I'm going to create a tool. So if I select that, I'm going to copy it, and then this copy that I have, I'm going to edit that. And I'm going to change the name to a 1.0mm end mill, change the diameter to 1.0. Now, obviously the feeds are going to be wrong. I would need to use whatever the manufacturer recommends. Select OK, and then select that, and now I have a 1mm end mill. So now what I can do is recalculate this, and you can see that I've got these areas here, which is the 1mm end mill. Now you can see that I left that as raster, so it's coming across, going round, coming back. It's probably not that efficient. So if you want to just change it while the dialog's still open to offset, click calculate, and that's it. Okay. Now, if you want to see this one, you can see that that's this sort of brown color. So let's turn these on, like so. Let's turn these vectors off. And you can see that it's pretty much getting in everywhere. Okay, so that's fine. And I'll show you another way that you can actually simulate this. Go back to the 3D view. Let's rotate this around, like so. And if you right click on the toolpath, you can just select simulate toolpath. And it will give you a simulation. Let's just turn this off. You needn't worry about that. Let's select this one, and I'm going to use the simulation control bar this time. What this does, it creates a tool, and then you can play what it's actually doing. So this is the next tool. I can play that, and the next tool, I can play that. And I can actually take a look what this is actually machining. Okay, so that's another way of simulating. This is probably the most common way that you would simulate. The other way is just a 2D representation. For basically, I use that for area clearance. Okay, so when you've done that, you can delete the simulation. And what you'll notice is that when you delete the simulation, you lose the vectors. So what you need to do is select toggle vector visibility. Okay, so they've not been deleted, you just can't see them. Okay, so now let's create, let's say, this groove. I want a groove to go around the edge of the chopping board, the inside of the edge there. So let's go to Toolpaths, and I can do this by creating a profile. So if I select profile, now what you would normally use this for is to actually cut the part out, and we'll be using it in a moment to cut it out. But for this, I'm going to show you how to actually create a groove. Okay, so the first thing, it says profile outside. Now, we don't want to profile outside. We want to profile along. So we want to basically go along this line. Okay, and the finished depth, it automatically assumes that you want to cut the part out. Now, in this case, we don't. So the finished depth, I'm going to do this as 1.5 millimeters. Okay, now the reason that I've done that is because I want to use a tool that's got a bit of a shape on it. So I'm going to use a ball nose cutter. Okay, and the one that I'm going to use is 3 millimeters. So half of that, 1.5, it would give me a perfect 1.5 radius on the corners. Okay, so as I said, you just need to think about things just a little bit when you actually machine them. So let's use this 3 millimeter ball nose. Select that. I'm not going to change any other settings. That's going to be in a later demonstration. And select calculate now. Now, as I mentioned before, you can see that underneath there's a red toolpath that's gone a little bit deeper. Now, that's why I like to do everything in the 3D view, because I can actually see how deep it's actually machining. Okay, now I can simulate this. If I want to just simulate everything, just go to the toolpaths and select simulate all toolpaths. Okay, and that will give me a simulation. Now that looks fine at the moment, but I know that I've got another problem. If I take a look at the top, you can see this groove is really, really close to the A. And to be completely honest, if I was to machine that, I reckon it would probably break out, not look too great. Okay, so what I'm going to do is edit this toolpath, and I'm going to recalculate it. Now, what I need to do is basically make this shorter, and I can do that by something called node editing, really easy. I could also, there are lots of ways to do this. I could create a line down vertically and just trim it off if I wanted to, but a really quick way is to go into node editing, and that will give me all of these points. Now, if I hover over the middle of one of these, right click, you can see that I've got some extra options. One of those options is remove span. So if I select that, it's just remove that section. And the shortcut for that is R. So I can just remove that. Now, while that's all selected, I can calculate. And then if I just close that, let's reset the simulation. Simulate all toolpaths. You can see that it's coming a lot shorter. Okay, so that's how you basically can modify the vectors whilst you're in the toolpath. Okay, so we can leave the simulation on. You can do it with the simulation on, doesn't make a difference. Let's just toggle the vector visibility back on. Okay, so I can see my vectors, I can machine them. So let's select the outside. This time, create another profile. This is going to go on the outside to a finished depth of 15. Select a profiling tool. To cut the part out, I'm just going to use the largest tool that I have. And then select calculate now. And you can see that this is machining this. Now you can see that it's doing this in 2 passes. So there's 2 lines here. If I wanted to, and I wanted to change how far down it actually steps, I can change the step down here. Okay, so let's say that I wanted to change it to, let's say 2.5mm cuts. And you can see that it's doing a few more cuts there. Okay, so that's how you change basically how deep you want to machine it. So let's simulate that one. And you can see that it's cut the part out. Okay, now if you want to get this to look like how I had it at the very beginning, the way that you do that is just select simulation, select to delete the waste material here, and then for this piece, this is pretty easy. You can auto delete the waste material, or you can select keep picked material. Now when you select that, if you just select the material to keep, it will just keep that and delete all of the rest. Okay, and then I can close that, and let's change the material. Maybe let's do this medium oak and apply, and then let's add a depth color, and that basically colors in anything that's been cut to a depth, and you can just change that to whatever you like on here. Now if you want to, you can add a color. Maybe I want it to be a darker color from the oak. I can select the color picker here and then just move over, maybe get the darkest color that I have, maybe that one. Select OK, and that changes the color to that color. Okay, so that's all of my machining done. Everything looks fine. Only thing I need to do now is send this to my CNC machine. Okay, now to do that, really easy. All that you need to do is go to Toolpaths, and then the first option is Save Toolpaths. Okay, so select that, and you'll have all of your toolpaths listed on the right hand side. Okay, now what you need to do, especially if you have a single headed machine, you want them to be separate. Save toolpaths to separate files. Okay, and I normally append the toolpath details to the file names. So this basically puts all of this detail into the file name, so I know what it actually is. Let's browse to a folder. Let's browse, let's say here, this is the folder I have. Select open. The machine file format. Now this is probably the most important part. Now these are what we call post processors. Now don't worry if you're not sure what a post processor is. It's just basically a converter that converts the information from ArtCAM into information that your CNC will understand. Okay, that's all that it does. Okay, so most CNCs will be listed under here. A lot of CNCs nowadays are just G code, or you could use maybe the Mac free. A lot of people use that. that we have there. Okay, that's all that you need to do. Just select the one that you want to use and then select save. And that's it, you're done. Okay, I can cancel that. Let's minimize this. Go to the 2D Toolpaths folder that I have, and you can see that I've got all of these Word documents. So if I open up one of those, let's say that one, you can see that it contains all of this information. Now these are just coordinates, basically tell your machine what to do. Okay, and you just need to take these, maybe put them on the stick or over the network, and then stick them into your machine, and off you go. And then you machine that part. Okay, so that brings an end to the demonstration. I hope that you found it useful. I hope that I didn't go too fast for you. If you have any questions whatsoever, then please drop us an email. The email address is artcam@autodesk.com. Just send us an email if you've got any queries. Send out the recording of this later on this week, I would imagine. If you do want to maybe upgrade to standard, just take a look on the website, download the 30-day trial, see what it's like. If you want to, just go to the store and purchase it. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, I will be doing a part 2 for this. So we're going to take a look at the leads, lead-ins, lead-outs, bridges, for instance. So a few more advanced features, and probably have a look at V-carving as well in the next one. Okay, so if you've got any questions, then please email us. And thanks ever so much for your time. And hopefully I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Goodbye.